The text message burned itself into my memory the moment I saw it on the screen. 12 more weeks and the cancer will finish our job. Then I'll have $50 million and we can finally be together without that bitter old woman interfering. My daughter's husband had sent those words to his mistress while Emily lay dying in hospice. But when the lawyer entered the room to read her will, he looked directly at Brandon and said 5 words that changed everything. "Mr. Cole, you're not named here." Then he read my name. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The call came at 6:47 in the morning on October 23rd. I'd been awake for an hour already, sitting at my kitchen table with coffee and the newspaper, watching Seattle's gray autumn dawn through my window. When my phone rang and I saw the hospice center's number, my hands went cold. I already knew what they were going to say. "Mrs. Chun, this is Nurse Davidson from Evergreen Hospice. I'm so sorry to inform you that your daughter Emily passed peacefully at 6:15 this morning." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, forced myself to breathe. Was anyone with her? Her husband was here. He's making arrangements now. Brandon? Of course Brandon was there. "I'm coming right now. Mrs. Chun, Mr. Cole has requested that we limit visitors while he handles the immediate arrangements. Perhaps you could come this afternoon." I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "That's my daughter. I'm coming now." 30 minutes later, I pulled into the hospice parking lot. My hand shook as I turned off the ignition. Emily was gone. My only child, my brilliant daughter, who'd built one of Seattle's most respected architecture firms from nothing, who designed buildings that changed the city's skyline, was gone. The breast cancer had taken 14 months to kill her, and I'd watched every excruciating day of it. Inside, the hospice coordinator met me at the front desk. "Mrs. Chun, I'm very sorry for your loss. Your son-in-law has already left with the funeral home. He said he'd be in touch about arrangements." "Already left? She just died an hour ago." The coordinator's expression was carefully neutral. Mr. Cole was very efficient. He had everything prepared. I walked to Emily's room anyway. The bed was already stripped, cleaned, ready for the next patient. All her personal items were gone. The photographs I'd brought, her favorite blanket, the architectural magazine she'd kept by her bedside, even when she was too weak to read them, all removed. It was as if she'd never been there at all. My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. "Funeral is Saturday, October 28th, 11 a.m. Lakeview Memorial. We'll send you details later." No condolences, no acknowledgement that I just lost my daughter. Just cold logistics from the man who'd been married to her for 8 years. I called him straight to voicemail. I called again. Same result. I drove to the house Emily had designed, the stunning modern home on Capitol Hill with Florida, to ceiling windows overlooking Lake Union. The house I'd visited every week during her illness, bringing soup and comfort and watching my daughter waste away while her husband barely seemed to notice. The gate was closed. The electronic gate that Emily had programmed to recognize my car to always let me through was locked. I pressed the intercom button. Brandon's voice crackled through the speaker. "Margaret, this isn't a good time." "Brandon, I need to talk to you about Emily. I need to understand what happened." "She died. Cancer, that's what happened. The funeral's on Saturday. I'll see you there. Let me in, please. I need to be in her house. I need to feel close to her. The house is being prepared for visitors. I can't have people tracking through right now. Saturday, Margaret." The intercom went dead. I sat in my car staring at that closed gate at the house my daughter had poured her soul into designing. And I felt something shift inside me. Something was very wrong here. Brandon's coldness went beyond grief. This was something else. I called the one person I knew I could trust. David Park had been our family attorney for 20 years, had helped Emily set up her firm, had been a friend to all of us. He answered on the second ring. "Margaret, I just heard. I'm so sorry." My voice cracked. "David, something's wrong. Brandon locked me out. He's already arranged everything without telling me. It's like he was waiting for her to die." A long pause. "Can you come to my office today? I think we need to talk." The funeral was 5 days of torture. I spent them in my small house in Wallingford, surrounded by photographs of Emily. Emily at 5, gap-toothed and proud of her first building block creation. Emily at 15, winning the state architecture competition. Emily at 25 opening her firm. Emily at 35 standing in front of the downtown tower she designed, her face glowing with pride. Brandon called once, leaving a brief voicemail with the funeral details. No other communication, no checking on how I was doing. No discussion about Emily's wishes, nothing. When I tried calling him back, he didn't answer. When I drove by the house again, the gate remained locked. I left flowers at the gate, knowing he'd probably throw them away. Saturday morning arrived cold and overcast, typical Seattle October weather. I dressed in my black suit, the one I'd worn to my husband Robert's funeral 5 years earlier, and drove to Lakeview Memorial Chapel. The parking lot was already full when I arrived at 10:30. Inside, the chapel was packed with people I didn't recognize. Emily had been well known in Seattle's architecture community, had won awards, had been featured in design magazines. All these people had come to pay their respects. And there was Brandon standing at the front near the closed casket, shaking hands, accepting condolences. He wore an expensive black suit, his dark hair perfectly styled, his expression appropriately somber. He looked like the grieving widower, performing his role flawlessly. I watched him hug a woman I didn't recognize, watched his hand linger on her back just a fraction too long, watched him smile just briefly before remembering to look sad again. I made my way through the crowd. Emily's best friend Claire found me first, embracing me tightly. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. Emily loved you so much." "Thank you, Claire. This is all so sudden. I can't believe Brandon arranged everything without even talking to me." Claire's expression darkened. "He's been like this for months. Ever since Emily got really sick, he's been distant, cold." Emily noticed it too. Before I could respond, Brandon appeared at my elbow. "Margaret." He didn't hug me, didn't offer any physical comfort. Just stood there, his voice low. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't make a scene today. This is about honoring Emily. I wouldn't dream of making a scene. I just want to say goodbye to my daughter." "Good, because I've already had to deal with enough complications. The last thing I need is you questioning my decisions in front of everyone." He walked away before I could respond. Claire touched my arm. "Margaret, there's something you should know. Emily was going to leave him." My heart stopped. "What?" "About a month ago. She told me she'd contacted a divorce attorney. She'd found something. She wouldn't tell me what, but she said once she was strong enough she was going to file. She made me promise not to tell anyone, especially not Brandon." The service began before I could process this revelation. We filed into the chapel, took our seats. I sat in the second row because Brandon had filled the first row with people I'd never met. Business associates, Emily's employees, but not family. Not me. The funeral director spoke briefly about Emily's accomplishments. Then Brandon approached the podium. He gripped the edges, let his head drop. When he looked up, there were tears on his cheeks. Real tears or manufactured ones. I couldn't tell anymore. Emily was my everything. He began, his voice breaking perfectly. "We built a life together, a business partnership, dreams together. She fought so courageously, and I was by her side every single day. Every single day." That was a lie. I'd been at that hospice more than he had. I'd held Emily's hand through chia use, through radiation burns, through the terrible nights when the pain was so bad she couldn't sleep. Brandon had been conveniently busy with work, with meetings, with excuses. Her final words to me were, "Take care of everything, my love. Build on what we created together." His voice caught, "And I will. I promise her I will." Emily never called anyone my love. She said babe or honey when she was being affectionate, but never my love. That wasn't her language. Brandon continued for another 5 minutes, painting a picture of devoted love that didn't match the reality I'd witnessed. When he stepped down, he touched his eyes with a tissue. By the time he reached his seat, the tears were gone, evaporated like they'd never existed. After the service, people moved to the reception area in the adjacent building. Sandwiches, coffee, quiet conversations. I stood near the window, watching rain begin to fall, feeling utterly alone in a room full of people. Brandon was surrounded by a cluster of people accepting condolences like a politician at a fundraiser. He caught my eye across the room, and for just a moment, his mask slipped. The expression underneath wasn't grief. It was satisfaction. Then someone else approached him and the mask snapped back into place. I found Claire again near the coffee station. Claire, you said Emily was going to divorce him. Do you know anything else? Did she say why? Claire glanced around, lowered her voice. She found financial irregularities in the business accounts. Money moving around that she couldn't explain. And there was someone else, a woman. Emily wouldn't tell me who, but she said she had proof. She was gathering evidence before she filed. My chest tightened. Where would she have kept that evidence? Probably at her office. She had a private safe there, a personal one separate from the company documents. She showed it to me once, said it was where she kept things that mattered. Before I could respond, Brandon's voice cut through the conversations. Margaret, could I have a word? He'd materialized beside us. Claire squeezed my arm and moved away quickly, clearly uncomfortable. Brandon steered me to a corner away from the other guests. His hand on my elbow was firm, just shy of painful. I want to make something clear, he said, his voice low enough that no one else could hear. Emily's business was our business. We built it together. I know you think because you're her mother you have some claim, but you don't. Everything goes to me as surviving spouse, the house, the firm, all of it. I wasn't trying to claim anything, Brandon. I just want to understand. There's nothing to understand. She died. I inherit and I'm moving forward with my life. You're retired, living on your teacher's pension. This isn't your world. Stay out of it. He released my arm and walked away, leaving me standing there furious and shaken. An older man approached me cautiously. Mrs. Chun, I'm George Mitchell. I was one of Emily's first clients. Watched her build that firm from a one-room office. I just wanted to say your daughter was remarkable. What she created was special. Thank you, George. It's a shame Brandon's planning to sell it. Emily loved that firm like it was her child. She would have wanted it to continue. My blood went cold. He's selling the firm. That's what he told us at the reception. Said he can't manage both his real estate business and Emily's firm. So he's going to sell it to a developer who will absorb the practice. We'll all be let go within 6 months. I thanked George and walked outside into the rain. I didn't care about getting wet. I just needed air. Needed to think. Brandon was going to sell Emily's firm, dismantle everything she'd built, destroy her legacy, and he was treating me like an obstacle. An inconvenient old woman who needed to stay out of his way. I pulled out my phone and called David Park. David, I need to know what's in Emily's will. Brandon says everything goes to him. Is that true? David's voice was careful. The will reading is scheduled for tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. at Emily's house. Brandon requested it be held there. All beneficiaries will be present. Am I a beneficiary? You need to be at the reading, Margaret. That's all I can say right now. I arrived at Emily's house at 5:45 the next evening. The gate was open this time, leading to a circular driveway that already held several cars. Brandon's Tesla, David Park's Mercedes, and 2 others I didn't recognize. The front door was unlocked. I walked into the soaring entrance hall with its dramatic staircase and wall of windows overlooking the lake. Emily had designed every detail of this house, the way the light fell at different times of day, the flow between rooms, the sense of openness and possibility. It was her masterpiece. Brandon was in the living room with 4 other people, all seated in chairs, arranged to face the large desk Emily had used as her home office. David Park stood behind the desk, organizing papers from his briefcase. Brandon glanced up as I entered. Margaret, you're here. David said I needed to be at the reading. Fine, sit wherever. He gestured vaguely at the empty chairs. The other people were strangers. 2 men in business attire, a middle-aged woman, and a younger woman who kept glancing nervously at Brandon. David cleared his throat. Thank you all for gathering. I know this is a difficult time. I am David Park, attorney for the estate of Emily Chan Cole. I will now read the last will and testament executed on September 20, 2024. Properly witnessed according to Washington state law. September 20th, just 5 weeks before Emily died. Recently enough that she'd known her time was limited, David opened the sealed envelope, pulled out several pages, adjusted his reading glasses. Then he looked directly at Brandon. Mr. Cole, this may come as a surprise, but you're not named as a beneficiary in this will. The room went silent. Complete total silence. Brandon laughed, a confused, uncertain sound. Excuse me? That's impossible. I'm her husband. Community property laws. This will was executed after Mrs. Cole filed for divorce. The filing supersedes community property claims. Brandon's face went white. She didn't file for divorce. I have the documents here. Filed September 18, 2024 with King County Superior Court. Mrs. Cole retained counsel and filed for dissolution of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences. You were served notice on September 22, though the notice was sent to your business address, not your home. Brandon stood up so fast his chair fell backward. This is fraud. You're manipulating documents. Emily would never. Mr. Cole, please sit down so I can proceed with the reading. If you wish to contest this will, you have legal recourse. But right now, I need to fulfill my obligation to Emily's estate. Brandon didn't sit. He stood there shaking. His carefully maintained composure shattered completely. David continued reading. I, Emily Chun Cole, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this my last will and testament. To my mother, Margaret Chun, I leave my entire estate, including Chun Architecture, all real property, all financial accounts, and all personal property to be held in trust for the establishment of the Emily Chun Foundation for Women in Architecture. The words hung in the air. I couldn't process them, couldn't make them real. Brandon found his voice. This is insane. She was dying, drugged up on painkillers. Her mother manipulated her, poisoned her mind against me when she was at her weakest. Mrs. Cole was examined by her oncologist on September 19, David said calmly. Medical records confirm her cognitive function was completely intact. The will was witnessed by two independent parties, neither of whom were family members. It is legally sound. I'll take you to court, Brandon said, pointing at me. I'll prove she coerced Emily. Turned my wife against me with lies and manipulation. I'll destroy you in litigation, old woman. Mr. Cole, David's voice hardened. If you make one more threat in this room, I will call security. Now sit down or leave. Brandon grabbed his jacket and stormed toward the door, but he stopped in the threshold, turned back to me. You think you've won? You haven't. I'll tie this up in probate for years. You'll spend every penny fighting me, and in the end you'll have nothing. The door slammed behind him. Through the window I watched him peel out of the driveway, tires squealing. David waited until the sound faded, then turned to the others in the room. Thank you for your patience. These are Emily's business partners and key employees. She wanted you to know that the firm will not be sold. It will continue under new leadership with Margaret Chun as trustee overseeing the transition. The relief on their faces was palpable. One of the men, the senior architect, spoke up. Mrs. Chun, Emily talked about you all the time. She said. You taught her to stand up for what's right. We're honored to work with you. After they left, David and I sat alone in Emily's living room. Rain pattered against the floor-to-ceiling windows. David, I don't understand. When did she file for divorce? Why didn't she tell me? He pulled out a file folder, handed it to me. Emily came to me on September 15th. She was weak, needed help walking into my office, but she was absolutely clear-headed. She said she'd discovered her husband was having an affair and stealing from the business. She wanted to divorce him and protect her assets before she died. I opened the folder. Divorce petition filed September 18th. Notice of service sent to Brandon's real estate office on September 22nd. He'd known Emily was divorcing him, and he'd never said a word. Did she have proof of the affair, the theft? She said she had evidence in a safe at her office. She wanted to gather everything before confronting him. She was worried he'd destroy evidence if he knew she was on to him. Then her health deteriorated rapidly and she ran out of time. So we don't know who he was having an affair with or how much he stole. David met my eyes. Not yet. But Emily was thorough. If she said she had evidence, it exists. We just need to find it. I drove home through the rain, my mind spinning. Emily had known. She discovered Brandon's betrayal. Had tried to protect everything she'd built. Had managed to file for divorce and change her will before she died. She tried to save me from this fight. But the fight wasn't over. Brandon was going to contest the will just as he'd promised. He'd drag me through court, make me prove Emily's competency, question my relationship with my daughter, try to paint me as a manipulator. Fine, let him try. I'd spent 30 years as a high school teacher dealing with difficult parents and entitled students and bureaucratic nonsense. I knew how to be patient, how to be thorough, how to fight when it mattered. And Brandon had made a critical mistake. He'd underestimated me, dismissed me as a retired teacher living on a pension, someone too old and powerless to threaten him. He had no idea what he'd started. The next morning I met David at his office. He'd brought in someone else, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s with intense dark eyes. "Margaret, this is Linda Martinez. She specializes in contested estate litigation. I'd like her help on this case." Linda shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Chun, I've reviewed the preliminary documents. Brandon Cole is going to fight dirty. He'll claim undue influence, mental incompetence, anything to invalidate that will. But we have advantages. The divorce filing establishes that Emily knew something was wrong with the marriage. The will was executed by independent witnesses. Her medical records show clear cognition. We have a strong position. What about the evidence Emily mentioned? The proof of the affair and the theft? That's our first priority. David said we need access to her office, specifically her personal safe. As executive of the estate, you have legal authority to enter company premises and examine all materials. We went to Emily's office that afternoon. The Chun Architecture Building was in South Lake Union, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and soaring ceilings. Emily had renovated it herself, turning an industrial space into something beautiful and functional. Her personal office was on the 3rd floor, overlooking the water. I stood in the doorway for a moment, breathing in the space where my daughter had created so much. Her drafting table, her awards on the wall, the photographs of her completed projects. David found the safe behind a framed architectural sketch. It was a biometric lock requiring a fingerprint. "We'll need to get this opened legally," Linda said. "I'll file a motion tomorrow for access to Emily's personal effects as part of estate administration." The motion was granted within 3 days. A locksmith came with us accompanied by a court official to witness the opening. The safe contained 3 folders meticulously organized. The first folder held bank statements, Chun Architecture accounts with transfers highlighted in yellow. $3.2 million moved to accounts I didn't recognize over an 18-month period. Each transfer was labeled as equipment purchases or consultant fees, but Emily had made notes in the margins. No equipment ordered and no consultant records. The second folder contained photographs. Brandon with a young woman kissing in a parking garage. More photos of them together at restaurants, entering an apartment building, sitting close in a coffee shop. The woman looked familiar somehow. The third folder was text message screenshots. My hands shook as I read them. From Brandon to Jay, Emily's getting worse. Maybe 12 more weeks, the oncologist said. Then we're free. From Jay to Brandon, 12 weeks feels like forever. I miss you. I hate sneaking around. From Brandon to Jay, once she's gone, I'll have everything. The business is worth $50 million, maybe more. We can go anywhere, do anything. Just be patient a little longer. From Jay to Brandon. What about her mother? You said she's always interfering. From Brandon to Jay. Margaret's a retired teacher on a fixed income. She's powerless. I'll handle her. Once I inherit, she'll have no say in anything. I sat down, suddenly dizzy. Linda took the phone from me gently. This is everything we need, she said quietly. This proves knowledge of Emily's condition, financial exploitation, and adultery during the marriage. In Washington state, adultery affects inheritance rights. Combined with the divorce filing, this makes Brandon's claim almost impossible. Who is Jay? I asked. Who's the woman in the photos? David was already on his laptop searching. Jessica Reynolds. She was listed as an employee at Brandon's real estate agency. Administrative assistant was. She quit 2 days after Emily died. No forwarding information. No notice, just disappeared. We spent the next week building the case. Linda filed our response to Brandon's will contest, attaching Emily's divorce filing, the medical records proving her competency, and witness statements from her oncologist and business partners. But we held back the evidence of Brandon's affair and theft. Linda's strategy was to let him commit to his story first, then destroy it with evidence he didn't know we had. The preliminary hearing was set for November 15th. The night before, David called me. Margaret, something interesting happened. Jessica Reynolds reached out through an attorney. She wants to talk. We met her at David's office the next morning. Jessica was 28, blonde, pretty in a forgettable way. She looked nervous, kept twisting her hands together. Mrs. Chun, I need you to understand something, she began. I'm not a bad person. I didn't know Emily was as sick as she was. Brandon told me they were separated, practically divorced. He said Emily was the one who wanted out, not him. When did you learn the truth? About 2 months ago. I went to his house unexpectedly. Thought I'd surprise him. Emily answered the door. She was so thin, so weak, and she had this look of total devastation when she saw me. That's when I realized he'd been lying about everything. Why didn't you end it then? Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I did. I told him I couldn't do this anymore, but he convinced me to wait. Said Emily was dying anyway, that ending things would just upset her more in her final days. He said once she passed, we could be together openly and I wouldn't have to feel guilty anymore. He made it sound like the compassionate thing to do. And after she died, he changed, became cold, calculating, started talking about selling the business, about moving to California. When I asked when we'd go public with our relationship, he laughed. Said I'd served my purpose and he didn't need complications now. That's when I realized he'd been using me. Linda leaned forward. Jessica, do you still have text messages with Brandon? Every single one. I haven't deleted anything. Would you be willing to provide them to us and testify if needed? Jessica nodded. I want to. He manipulated both of us, you and me. Emily didn't deserve what he did to her. And Mrs. Chun, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt your daughter. The hearing the next day was supposed to be procedural, just establishing timelines and discovery schedules. But when Brandon's attorney David Blank stood up to present their case, Linda made her move. Your Honor, before we proceed, I'd like to enter supplemental evidence that fundamentally changes this case. Judge Morrison, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, raised an eyebrow. Counselor, this is a preliminary hearing. I understand, Your Honor, but this evidence directly contradicts Mr. Cole's claims and needs to be part of the record. It includes proof of adultery, financial exploitation, and Mr. Cole's awareness of Mrs. Cole's divorce filing. Brandon's lawyer stood quickly. Objection. We haven't been provided discovery. The evidence just came to light, Linda said calmly. And given Mr. Cole's claims that he was a devoted husband, I believe it's relevant to determine his credibility. Judge Morrison considered. I'll allow it. But this better be as relevant as you claim, Miss Martinez. Linda approached the bench with 3 folders. As the judge reviewed them, I watched Brandon's face. Confusion at first, then recognition, then panic as he understood what we had. Your Honor, Linda said. These text messages show Mr. Cole discussing his wife's death timeline with his mistress, specifically telling her they only needed to wait 12 more weeks for the cancer to finish and he'd inherit $50 million. He also made disparaging remarks about Mrs. Chun, calling her powerless and claiming he'd handle her after gaining control of the estate. The judge's expression hardened as she read. Mr. Blank, does your client wish to respond to this? David Blank was whispering urgently with Brandon. Brandon's face had gone from pale to red. His jaw clenched. Your Honor, we'd like to request a recess to review this evidence. Motion denied. Mr. Cole, you're claiming your wife was manipulated by her mother into disinheriting you. But this evidence suggests you were conducting an extramarital affair while your wife was dying, stealing from the business you claim was a partnership, and planning to take everything without any intention of honoring her legacy. Would you care to explain? Brandon stood, his voice shook. Those messages are out of context. Jessica Reynolds was a friend who helped me through a difficult time. Emily and I had problems, yes, but that doesn't mean you told your mistress to be patient for 12 more weeks until your wife died. Judge Morrison interrupted. You called your mother-in-law powerless and claimed you'd handle her once you inherited. This court does not look kindly on individuals who exploit dying spouses. Linda pressed on. Your Honor, we also have evidence of financial misconduct. Mr. Cole transferred $3.2 million from Chan Architecture accounts to personal offshore holdings over 18 months. Each transfer was disguised as business expenses, but no corresponding services or equipment were provided. Mrs. Emily Chun discovered these transfers and filed for divorce on September 18th. She changed her will immediately after. specifically to prevent Mr. Cole from benefiting from his own fraud. I didn't steal anything, Brandon's voice rose. That business was half mine. Community property. Your wife filed for divorce before her death, Judge Morrison said coldly. The filing dissolves community property claims. And even if it didn't, fraud invalidates any claim you might have had. She looked at Brandon's attorney. Mr. Blank, I suggest you counsel your client about the wisdom of continuing this litigation. The recess lasted 30 minutes. Through the courthouse window, I watched Brandon and David Blank in heated conversation. Blank's hands gestured emphatically, probably explaining the impossibility of Brandon's position. When court reconvened, Blank stood with the posture of a man delivering bad news. Your Honor, my client wishes to withdraw his contest to the will. He acknowledges that the emotional stress of his wife's passing affected his judgment, and that he spoke in haste. He's prepared to accept the will as written and return all disputed funds to the estate. In exchange for, Judge Morrison asked skeptically, in exchange for Mrs. Chun agreeing not to pursue criminal charges for the financial improprieties. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Chun, this is your decision. I stood slowly. For 5 weeks, I grieved my daughter while watching her husband perform false sorrow. I'd been locked out of her house, dismissed as an irrelevant old woman, threatened with litigation designed to destroy me financially and emotionally. Brandon had counted down the days to my daughter's death. He'd stolen her money, betrayed her trust, and planned to erase her legacy by selling the firm she'd built with her own hands. But prosecuting him would take years. Years of trials and appeals and dragging Emily's name through the mud. Years I didn't want to spend focused on him. I accept, I said, on the condition that he returns every dollar, signs a comprehensive release, and never contacts me or anyone associated with Chun Architecture again. Agreed, Blank said quickly. Judge Morrison signed the order. Mr. Cole, you're fortunate Mrs. Chun is more gracious than you deserve. This court upholds the will in its entirety. All assets transfer to Mrs. Margaret Chun. As trustee, you will return $3.2 million within 30 days and surrender all claims. If you violate any term of this agreement, the restraining order Mrs. Chun is filing will be immediately enforced. Brandon didn't look at me as he left the courtroom. He just walked out. David Blank following, looking relieved to be done with the case. He'd never had a chance of winning. Linda touched my arm. You did it, Margaret. Emily's legacy is protected. I drove to Chun Architecture that afternoon. The staff had gathered in the main studio, nervous about their futures. I stood in front of them, these talented people my daughter had hired and mentored. I'm not an architect, I began. I taught high school English for 30 years. I don't know the technical side of what you do here, but I know what my daughter valued. Excellence, integrity, innovation. She built this firm to create beautiful, functional spaces that improve people's lives. That mission continues. I appointed George Mitchell, the senior architect, as managing director. We established a board of directors drawn from Emily's longtime employees. And we began planning the Emily Chun Foundation for Women in Architecture, a scholarship and grant program for women entering the field. The foundation launched on what would have been Emily's 41st birthday. March 15th, we held the ceremony in the lobby of the tower she designed downtown, her signature project. Claire spoke about Emily's vision. George presented the first scholarships to 3 young women studying architecture at the University of Washington. And I stood at the podium looking at the crowd of Emily's friends, colleagues, clients, and spoke from my heart. My daughter died too young. She had so much more to create, so many more buildings to design. But what she accomplished in 40 years was extraordinary. This foundation ensures her legacy continues, that other women will have the opportunities she fought for, that her voice remains part of the conversation about what architecture can be. After the ceremony, I drove to Lakeview Memorial. Emily's grave was on a hillside overlooking Lake Washington with a view of the skyline she'd helped shape. The headstone was simple granite with her name, dates, and one line. She built beauty into the world. I placed fresh flowers at the base. Same thing I've been doing every Sunday since she died. We did it, honey, I said quietly. Your firm is safe. Your foundation will help hundreds of women follow your path. Brandon got nothing except the knowledge that he lost everything by being greedy and cruel. I touched the cool granite. I miss you every single day. But I promise I'll protect what you built. Your name will mean something for generations to come. The March wind was cold, but spring was coming. New growth after the long winter. New beginnings after devastating loss. I walked back to my car, passing other graves with their own stories of loss and memory. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda Martinez. Foundation paperwork all filed. First grants approved. Well done, Margaret. I started the car and drove home, watching Seattle's skyline in my rearview mirror. Somewhere in that cluster of buildings was the tower Emily had designed. Her mark on this city permanent and proud. Brandon had called me powerless. Had dismissed me as a retired teacher who couldn't possibly challenge him. He'd been wrong about everything. I was 70 years old. I'd lost my husband and now my daughter. I'd fought the hardest battle of my life against a man who'd betrayed everything decent. And I'd won. Not just in court. I'd won by protecting what mattered. By honoring my daughter's vision. By turning grief into purpose. Emily's legacy was secure. The foundation would grow, would help women who dreamed of building beauty the way she had. Her firm would continue creating the kind of thoughtful, innovative architecture she believed in. That was worth fighting for. That was worth everything. If you like